Hello, and welcome back to Many Adventures Mini. So this week I'm going to be painting this Deathtide Jurakin miniature from the most recent Artisan Guild Patreon release. I know I do a lot of Artisan Guild stuff on this channel, but I really do love their stuff, and I love my 3D printer as well, and it just kind of goes hand in hand, and all their sculpts look amazing. Same with this guy, he is fantastic. I printed him using the pre-supported tier from Artisan's Guild. Came out pretty good, although I'm still tweaking my printer settings for this new resin mixture that I'm trying, so yeah. We'll get into this one here now. This is one of the ones where I tried doing my zenithal priming technique, starting with this dark gray and working up into brighter tones. And starting here, I'm just going to say that this miniature did not come out as I hoped it would. It's one of the ones that I might consider the closest to a failure that I've put up on the channel so far. It still ends up being perfectly fine and usable for tabletop gaming, but it doesn't photograph well, and the effects just, I did not get what I wanted like the entire time through. I was doing a little bit of experimenting here and there. This was the first experiment. You can see I'm trying to do an airbrush glaze with some thinned down indigo ink, and if I had stopped earlier this would have been fine. The whole purpose is that you're supposed to start light and work your way adding opacity until you get it right, and I ended up going just a little bit too far and it came out too dark. This is one of those things that tends to darken up as you do it, and I was not happy with the tone that I ended up with. It ended up being a bit too dark. But I sealed it with some matte varnish so I could continue working on it, and started getting some of the other details, hoping I can fix the overly dark skin tone later. So I go ahead and use some leather brown to put in his net here. I was a little conflicted on how I was going to do the net, whether I wanted to go white and put a heavy wash on it to get like the color effects or whatnot, but I decided to do this, and I'll go with a darker wash later on. And then also here with the spear is, to me, the spearhead looked like bone, and I felt like that kind of continued down, but the spear haft actually looks a bit more like coral rather than bone, and I just kind of painted it like it was bone, and I'm not, it's the end result looks fine and everything, but I'm not 100% happy with it. And you'll hear me saying that a lot with this miniature. Everything came out technically okay and fine, but I'm not really happy with any of it. And then this was another thing. I tried dry brushing this orc blood on because the blue seemed so dark, and I wanted to just tint the armor towards kind of a purplish color for like a corally purple thing. I'm kind of basing the color scheme a little bit off of the fishmen people from the 5th edition D&D Player's Handbook. They're called like the Samhain or something like that. Their name is ridiculously hard to pronounce, but D&D has some fish people that look very similar to this, and I was trying to somewhat go off of that color scheme for what I was trying to get and the effect I was going for. I don't think I did too terribly great, but yeah. I figured this guy's armor looked like it was kind of corally and whatnot, and decided to go with like a purpley coral color, and I tried to replicate that as well with the bit of coral he's standing or swimming over or whatnot. And I tried to start doing this with dry brushing, and it wasn't really working for me, and so then I came in later and just painted it in normally. Probably should have done this from the beginning, but I was just kind of playing around with this one, trying to figure out what would work, and yeah, most things didn't work. But I figured it would be a good opportunity for me to show and share that not every piece comes out great. Sometimes you get less than desirable results, and that's just part of the process. It's like you learn from it and you move on. And I'm thinking I might put out a second Jurakin video trying a completely different approach and color scheme and whatnot, and see if I get a better, more desirable result out of it than what I ended up with here. So look forward to that. I'll see about trying to get that out in the next couple days or so. Do another Jurakin warrior guy like this. I might end up doing 2 or 3 of these guys just because there's so much that you can do with this kind of color scheme, and I'd like to play around with a handful of different color schemes. And even if you do drastically different color schemes on these guys, they can still go well together because fish are so like varied and diverse with their coloring in many cases that I feel like I could have this like dark blue guy right next to like a fish belly white fish guy, and they would still be cohesive. And part of that is the sculpt. It's like they're sculpted to be part of a group. But another part of that is that's pretty much it. But it's due to their nature as like fish people that I can get away with doing something like that. So look forward to that video. I hope I'll get it out here in the next few days or so. If I can keep everything in camera, you can see I decided to go with a black wash on the leather bits. I kind of felt like this would show them having been submerged underwater a little bit and being a bit more like grimy and dirty leather. And here I'm doing a bit of a brighter grimoire purple dry brush on top of the other stuff that I did. And this is the next bit that I tried that didn't go all that well. You may have seen I used a little bit of scaly hide on the little bits of seaweed caught in the net. And I thinned that down into a glaze, and I'm trying to use that as like a highlight layer on the skin to make him a little bit brighter and kind of tint him a little bit more towards green over the blue color that I currently have going here. And this did not really work as well as I'd hoped. If I'd been maybe a little bit more patient, maybe it would have worked if I'd gotten some smoother blends, because going from a blue to a green like this is not the smoothest transition. At least not like the darker blue tone that I had here, trying to highlight it with this more kind of paley, scaly green. I used a little bit too much paint at a time. It was a little bit too thick. I'm used to going from different shades of the same color, so this was a bit of a learning experience, that if you're shifting colors a little bit as you're going up, you can get some weird effects. And I think it's also partially because the underside blue is from an ink and not an acrylic, and so the acrylic sitting on top of it looks almost a little chalky in some places. And it looks fine here and everything, but like I was saying, this whole miniature ends up looking good enough, and I don't mind using it in like a normal like D&D setting, but it's certainly not like my best work, and it doesn't really show up on camera well when we get to the end bits. So everything just looks overall a little bit funny. I'm also trying to continue down the coral down here. I really should have tried to do more of like a sandy effect, so I wasn't entirely happy with that, and trying to get the blue water coming in here with this black. That does help a little bit, just cleaning up the base somewhat. Doesn't do a ton though. Fill in the eyes. I do leave these just black because they're fish eyes. They're pretty much just all black, but I do take a little bit of this mummy rubs and dab just a titch in the corner of the eye to be represent a reflection, but leave it as solid as I can. Brightening up the blue on the base a little bit, throw an indigo wash over everything like I did with the chest plate and whatnot. Just trying to get everything to get as like blended as I can going in back here. Probably overdid it a little bit, but just working through. And lastly here, I'm using a bit of a glaze wash, a glossy varnish here, so that everything looks wet when you finish. And here's the final product. Like I said, he doesn't photograph well, works perfectly well for tabletop, but not my best work. But if you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. It does help my channel out a lot. If you want to catch future videos and more Fishman schemes, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever any of my videos go out. If you want to help support me directly, please look below to my Etsy and Patreon links, as well as I'm going to be starting to include Amazon affiliate links below that link to specific gear that I use in my painting process. So click down there and you can go find out stuff, and it gives me a little bit of a kickback if you buy anything after you go through those links. So please take a look at them down there. And if you want to get any behind the scenes or preview kind of stuff, please check out my Facebook page. There's a link to that down in the description below. And with that, I hope to see everybody back again next time.